Welcome, everybody. We're so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for taking this time to join us. And during tonight's discussion, you'll have a chance to learn about the Knowles Teaching Fellowship Program and also hear some firsthand accounts from different fellows about how it has positively impacted their teaching practices. So we have 3 fellows with us tonight. Before we get started, I would just like to mention a few of the technological things. So video and audio are turned off for all participants. And so I would encourage you to use the Q&A box, which you can find typically at the bottom of your Zoom screen, that you can ask any questions that you have. At the end of the presentation and the panel questions, we will address the Q&A questions that have been put in there during that time. So my name is Erin Oakley, and I'm very excited to serve as your host this evening. I joined the Knowles community as part of the 2015 cohort, so that makes me a senior fellow now. Which means that I have successfully completed the 5-year fellowship program. I'm currently in my 8th year of teaching at St. Catherine University in St. Paul, Minnesota. And in addition to my teaching, I serve as the math science support specialist on campus. And so I coordinate the tutoring for all the introductory math science and health science courses that we offer. Also, in my spare time, I serve as one of the co-editors-in-chief for Kaleidoscope, which is the Knowles Journal. It's another great way that you can get involved, both as a fellow and as a senior fellow. So before we start, we have quite a few different introductions. So I'd just like to give everybody a shout out. One of my co-presenters is here, Jen Mosgrove, who is the director of the Teaching Fellows program at Knowles. Jen started her career teaching 6th grade math in Maryland, and then went on to complete her graduate studies in education, where she focused on supporting beginning teachers across K-12 mathematics education. So she has been supporting new high school math and science teachers at Knowles for the last 16 years. So very excited to have her here with us to tell us more about the fellowship. Next, I'd like to introduce, we have 3 panelists here tonight as well. So Emily Berman is also a Knowles Senior Fellow from my cohort, the 2015 cohort. She's in her 9th year teaching science at Thomas A. Edison High School, which is a public high school in Alexandria, Virginia. At Edison, she teaches physics in the Global STEM Challenges program, which is a program that integrates math and science and engineering curriculum through a project-based learning. She also serves as a freshman advisor there and as a member of her school's diversity, equity, and inclusion team. Next, we have Jennifer Flonichar. I probably said your name wrong, even though you said it to me before. I'm so sorry. And she is a 2020 Knowles Teaching Fellow. She's in her 3rd year teaching math at the School of Industrial Design, Engineering, and Arts in Tacoma, Washington, also known as IDEA. So IDEA is one of 3 innovative schools in the urban Tacoma Public School District. And she has an industry background actually in aeronautics and aviation logistics and systems engineering and operating research. So at IDEA, she teaches geometry, advanced algebra, aeronautics, and aviation. And she's also on her school's equity representative and co-facilitates Social Innovation Laboratory and Girls Who Code Club, and also a drone club, which sounds awesome. And last but certainly not least, we have Lucas Reislinger, a 2017 Knowles Teaching Fellow. And he is in his 7th year of teaching science at West Albany High School in Albany, Oregon. West Albany is a mid-sized public school in a mid-sized city in the heart of the Willamette Valley. So at West Albany, he teaches physical science, earth science, and space science, avid, and occasionally biology. So many, many hats that he can wear. Lucas is also a member of his AVID site development team, and he's a co-planner on the staff's professional development curriculum, as well as a member of the school site council. So before we get to our panel and hear from our lovely panelists that we have, Jen will give us a brief overview of Knowles, as well as the Teaching Fellows program and how we can apply. So please take it away, Jen.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here tonight. So the Knowles Teacher Initiative was established by Janet H. and C. Harry Knowles in 1999 to increase the number of high-quality math and science teachers and ultimately to improve math and science education in the United States. And at Knowles, we believe that teachers can and should be the primary agents of educational improvement. And this belief is woven throughout all aspects of the Foundation's programming, including our Teaching Fellows program. The Knowles Teaching Fellows program was designed specifically to address the challenges faced by new high school math and science teachers. The 5-year program supports them in their efforts to develop teaching expertise and to lead from the classroom. Each year, we award approximately 35 fellowships to new math, chemistry, physics, and biology teachers who have outstanding content knowledge, are committed to becoming great teachers, and possess the potential to become the kinds of teacher leaders who make a difference in schools. Knowles Teaching Fellows receive a comprehensive array of benefits that are designed to support new teachers and emerging teacher leaders. We support fellows financially by offering grants to cover expenses that are associated with purchasing classroom materials and engaging in professional development. Fellows are also eligible to request funds to develop and execute leadership activities that have an impact beyond their own classroom. In addition to the grants, fellows are eligible to receive stipends. We recognize that our fellows are highly accomplished and have often made sacrifices, both in money spent on teacher prep programs and opportunity costs incurred by choosing a lower paying profession. The stipends allow fellows to possibly reduce debts that they may have incurred and to reduce the financial burden that teachers often bear, both of which are factors that contribute to sustainability in the profession. Alternatively, stipends can be used to support fellows financially during the summer months, allowing them to concentrate on reflecting on the past year, preparing for the coming year, and professional development, rather than taking on a part-time job during the summer, as unfortunately many teachers need to do. In total, fellows are able to access more than $50,000 in financial support over the 5 years of the fellowship. This is above and beyond the professional development and support that they receive throughout the fellowship work. Just to note here, though, various grants and stipends are subject to board approval on an annual basis. Just need to mention that. We value the expertise and knowledge of skillful teachers, which is why we support our fellows with mentors and coaches. Our experienced teaching fellow staff view themselves first and foremost as teachers. Our staff regularly check in with fellows, support them to plan and reflect on instruction, talk them through challenging professional dilemmas, and support them through various other challenges. In addition to staff, each team supports fellows with 2 or 3 veteran teachers, most of them with over 20 years of experience as both teachers and teacher leaders. These team specialists bring an on-the-ground experience and credibility. They attend meetings, support fellows in their inquiry, and provide counsel as true master teachers. Knowles Fellows are able to tap into a support network of more than 450 teachers who are committed to improving math and science education. From in-person conversations that take place at meetings to virtual conversations that take place in our online community, invaluable support is just mere moments away. We invest in bringing fellows together 3 times a year, sometimes as an entire community, and sometimes just as a cohort. Attendance at Knowles meetings is often cited by fellows as a main benefit of the program. New math and science teachers must submit an online application to apply for a Knowles Teaching Fellowship. 2023 Knowles Teaching Fellows will be selected following a thorough review of all submitted applications and the completion of an interview process that will begin in January of 2023 and end in May of 2023. Details about the application process can be found on our website at knowlesteachers.org/apply. I'm going to outline now, though, some of the eligibility requirements for the fellowship. First, applicants must have earned a degree or an equivalent to the degree in the content area that they are applying for, either math, biology, chemistry, or physics, and this degree needs to be earned by September 1st, 2023. Second, all applicants will need to be state certified or licensed to teach math or science in a high school classroom by September 1st, 2023. Last, the fellowship is intended to support teachers who are first or second year teachers during their first year of the fellowship. However, we're excited to share that for this year only, we are expanding the eligibility to include teachers who are entering their third year of teaching in the fall of 2023. For the purpose of eligibility, we consider an applicant's first year of teaching to be the first year in which they teach full-time for the full academic year as a teacher of record. And we recognize that even with these specific criteria, it's certainly possible that you have questions about your unique situation. And we want to make sure that you confirm your eligibility before investing the time needed to apply for the fellowship. So if you have questions about eligibility, please send your inquiry to apply@knowlesteachers.org, and we'll be sure to respond quickly. Again, new math and science teachers must submit an online application to apply for the Knowles Teaching Fellowship. The 2023 application is open now, and you can see on here the deadline of when the online application is due. I think with that, I'm sending it back to the panel.
Thank you so much, Jen, for providing us just an overview of the fellowship and also some of those eligibility requirements, including the new one that you can be a third-year teacher to apply for the application. So as Jen said, we're going to move into our panel discussion. If you have questions that come up during this time, again, please feel free to use the Q&A function that you can find at usually the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will get to those questions as well. But to kick us off, we have a couple of fairly commonly asked questions. So as Jenna talked about, if you are applying, you would be a 2023 Knowles Fellow, and that is because Knowles selects teaching fellows in cohorts. So our first question for the panel is, in what ways has your cohort been important to your experience as a fellow? And I was just going to say that Emily and I were in the same cohort, and I think that no matter what cohort you are in, it's just such a wonderful experience to have like a close-knit group. So Emily, would you like to start us off and talk about our lovely cohort?
I would be honored, Erin. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think the community at Knowles is by far the greatest benefit I felt as a fellow, and your cohort in particular, because you're all sort of around the same stage of teaching, and you all kind of make the same mistakes and go through the same trials and tribulations. And it's so nice to just have some people in the trenches with you. I know most cohorts, including ours, has a group chat that's still super active, even though we've graduated from the fellowship for 2 years ago. And so just having that community, I also think that it's been invaluable, especially if you might be moving around. So I started off in Rhode Island and had a job. My student teaching position offered me a job, but then I moved to Chicago and now I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. And along the way, all of my cohort fellows who've lived in different states have helped me out sort of with the job hunt. And so it's like a practical purpose, but it's also just nice to have friends whatever city you're in. It's been really fun.
Thanks so much, Emily. Lucas or Jennifer, would you like to chime in as well?
I'm not sure I would say anything much more than what Emily said. I would echo a lot of that. The only additional point maybe is it was so nice for me having a cohort of other teachers from around the country, and just getting to hear their perspectives of what it was like to teach in their different contexts. I kind of grew up in the same context that I teach in, and so getting everyone else's experience and hearing their stories really broadened my perspective.
The only thing different I would add is I happened to start teaching in the middle of the pandemic when we were all in remote learning. And I felt very isolated in those moments, particularly because I was the only person teaching in my particular course in my school. So having my cohort to lean on really helped reinvigorate me when things got difficult, and also provided that sounding board for ideas that I just didn't have in my own community at school.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. For our next question, so every year teaching fellows have the opportunity to write grants to access Knowles funding, both for professional development, but also classroom materials. Can you tell us a little bit about a grant that you have submitted and how it benefited and impacted your teaching practice? Lucas, would you be willing to start us off?
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try and make it quick. There's a few that have kind of all fallen in the same category. Since kind of the beginning of my teaching career, I've been really passionate about teaching climate change. And when I first started, I didn't have any connections in the field or support from the curriculum or really even a ton of content knowledge. So I first wanted to learn more about it. And I reached out to some professors in Norway because I kind of figured they had the best handle on that kind of thing. And they were gracious to agree to meet with me. And then through the support of Knowles and some of the TDs, we ended up writing like my own 2-week professional development plan where I went over there and learned from them. And that experience was just tremendous and kind of a game changer for me. And then I guess over the next few years, I met other teachers in my cohort who are also really passionate about climate change. And so we started meeting up. A couple years ago, we wrote a grant through Knowles to meet in Oregon, and we did some citizen science on the coast, and we developed some climate change curriculum really focused on teaching students who have already experienced a lot of anxiety, as those two things kind of go hand in hand. So I guess the outcome of those were we presented at the Knowles summer meeting a couple times, which I'm sure will get brought up later. And this fall, we're actually going to present at our first national conference together at NABT. So all of those kind of proposals and grants over the few years have all kind of been incredibly valuable and intertwined.
Similar to Lucas, I've used the majority of my grants to focus on an issue I'm passionate about too. And that is what we call social innovation here. And I'm at an innovative school whose mission is to change public education through community partnerships. And we are focused in engineering and design. And as a result of that, I have focused a lot of my grants specifically on equity issues within the engineering industries. So our school just about mirrors the gender demographics of most tech industries, which is about 15% female and 85% male. And so the majority of my grant funding has been used to look at issues with that, how we can integrate general education with the CTE, which is career and technical education aspects, specifically in engineering, and then how do we close that gender equity grant? So my most recent grant request was for a set of iPads that we used in a summer camp that we offered free of charge to 2nd through 8th grade girls, to provide them an opportunity to experience STEM in a really safe environment. So ultimately leading to the recruitment at our school, which ultimately changes the industry demographics as well. So we had 3 goals for that camp. One was to make girls feel like they belong in STEM. The second was to get them excited about STEM. And the third goal was to make them realize that their presence in these industries and in these areas makes a difference and makes an impact on the community. So the iPads helped us by introducing them to drone technology, coding and programming drones, flying drones, and then also just working with basic coding activities that they didn't have access to through their own computers.
So unlike Lucas and Jennifer, I did not have like a thing. I know that I spent my money like all over the place. I spent it on materials. When I started out, I was at a school that didn't really have anything to sort of teach. I was teaching biology and chemistry in the beginning before I taught physics. And so I needed a bunch of materials. So I bought a bunch of things to do modeling. I got some tech. I got an iPad so I could record myself and then also like take notes on the board while I was teaching. I did 2 weeks in Yosemite, a professional development on climate science, but also how to use like field notebooks and observations in the classroom. I've gone to a few conferences. on like privilege and social justice. Went to the White Privilege Conference, and I went to Free Minds, Free People. It's like a sister conference. And I got Spanish lessons to improve my Spanish. I kind of did a lot. Whatever excited me just felt like I had the opportunity to pursue it. So I kind of just was trying to like get as much out of it as I could. Knowles also hosts a lot of professional development, and some of the best money I spent with my grants was on Knowles led PD. So we have different groups that we might talk about, but they run like engineering PD, and I attend one of those, and that sort of changed how I view engineering in my classroom. So I used it in a lot of spots. It was awesome.
Thank you all so much for sharing. I'm feeling very inspired. And that is one of the great things about Knowles is you get to talk with people a lot. And so you get to find out what other people have used their money on, and that might inspire you on something. A lot of cohorts also keep track of what people use it for. So you can, piggyback off of other people, and the TDs are a great resource for that. Of course, the best way to find out about that is when you get to connect with other fellows. And so Knowles invests quite a bit of money and time and effort and all the things in order to bring fellows together 3 times a year. Once in a very, very large summer conference where everybody is present, and then also in the fall and the spring when it's usually just your cohort or maybe 1 or 2 cohorts at the same time. The question would be, how have those meetings kind of furthered your growth as a teacher? Have there been maybe a particular meeting or a highlight from something that has happened that has really helped you? Lucas, would you be willing to start again? Since you talked about summer meeting before, so
Yeah.
I'm jumping on that.
Sure. Yeah. Again, I would just echo what Emily and others have said about, I think by far the most valuable asset of the whole Knowles experience is just that time together with your cohort, and doing that at the meeting space in particular. It's hard to pick out just one meaningful, just one single one out, but I've had the opportunity to present at a summer meeting a few times. And that's been really valuable in a few ways. One is like in my own classroom, I kind of write my lesson plan and, do things exactly like I want to do. But at summer meeting, I've got to co-present with a few other teachers. And so taking time to plan learning for other adult learners with other adults was really unusual for me and really meaningful and awesome, and just made it so much more fun. And so in addition to that learning, doing that with my co-presenters, Knowles always provides a session coach, and they meet with you before you give your session and kind of go over your plan and help you craft it into something really special. And they take data and help support you during the session itself, and then they reflect with you afterwards. So having gone through that experience a few times has been super valuable. So like this last summer, we did a presentation about climate change, like I mentioned, and got a ton of feedback, and now we're ready to go take it to a national conference where we won't have that same support, but we feel like we've kind of ran through it with someone before. So yeah, that would be one for me.
I can echo what Lucas said about presenting at summer conference. So I did my first presentation this summer at summer conference, and I actually had a really unique opportunity, and that was I co-presented with one of my colleagues from my school and brought them into the Knowles community. And there was a lot of really positive feedback on both sides by bringing kind of that, like connecting Knowles with the outside world and my own school. And the coaching aspect was incredible, and being able to present and share some of the things that you've done and being able to look at it in the context of other people's worlds was a really unique experience. I would add that for me, I've only actually been going to in-person meetings for a year because of COVID. So I've only had 3 experiences to connect with everyone. And one of the most impacting things to me has been actually the critical friendships and kind of challenging of ideas. I think sometimes we get too much into the routine of what we do. And so to me, to just kind of have that reset every like semester or 3 times a year to really think in depth about your own practice and the potential impacts of it in different ways, both positive and negative, really kind of keeps me on my toes and keeps me thinking and growing as a teacher.
Definitely agree with what Jennifer and Lucas said. Only thing I'd want to add is in relation to like the whole experience, being able to talk about your practice in a deeper way and to challenge your practice and being able to have these opportunities to present, it really elevates the teaching profession. I think a lot of the times we get bogged down in the day-to-day, like, is this, handout formatted correctly? And like, do I have to grade these tests? But it's nice to take a step back and sort of just like feel like a valued member of a professional community, like beyond the fact that we get to present and we get to like think about these big intellectual things in our teaching practices and these challenges and these like meaty topics. Like you also get to just like be at a conference in a hotel and you get to be in a hotel room and like you get, food comped and, or like you have like nice dinners and breakfast and lunches together. And it just feels like this thing that when I entered the profession, wasn't glamorous in my mind. And it just like is a week of, or like 3 days of just feeling like really valued. And I think that, it buoys you sort of, as Jennifer was saying, to reset, but also buoys you to be like, I am important and I'm valued. And it brings like just a really wonderful energy back to your home location.
Thank you all so much for sharing. I have to agree. I think all of those are wonderful opportunities. I think one of the other great things about both the summer conference, but any of them in general, is that you get to have hallway conversations with people who are just all really amazing. And sometimes it's not those big moments, but rather those individual moments that can really, bring some life back to your teaching practice. And one of the things they offer at summer conference is that the TDs, which we'll get to, the teacher developers, all hold office hours. And I can definitely think of many summer conferences where I went to their office hours and discussed a problem that I was experiencing, whether it was like technically professional only or a little bit of professional and personal. And they were just such wonderful people to talk to. And part of that is because Knowles does hire staff who are all experienced teachers, and they work with us as fellows, both as coaches and mentors and PD facilitators. They really do a lot for us as the staff. And while they officially have the title of program officer or teacher developer, we often just call them our TDs. You usually get assigned 1 or 2 over the course of the time that are your contacts. Would people be willing to maybe tell us a little bit about one of your TDs, how they've supported you or influenced you? Jennifer, would you be willing to start that?
Yeah, absolutely, Erin. I had a really impactful moment in my first year of teaching with one of my TDs, and I missed summer conference, my very, very first summer conference, because my daughter was in the hospital with appendicitis. And I found out the morning of it and I didn't know. And so summer conference comes and goes, and we're in September now, and I have all of this continual education work I'm supposed to do for Knowles. I have all of these meetings I'm supposed to be a part of. I can't keep up with my schoolwork as it is. And then I have 2 young kids and a husband that's deployed in the military. And I'm just losing my sanity in all realms of my life. And I'm talking to my TD, and she just was like, wait, hold on, time out here. Like, who said you had to do all this reading? And I was like, well, it's in the CE, I need to do it. She's like, no. The important thing here is that you learn. Like, we are here to support you. You are not a student. You are not in this mentality of just following instructions and doing the tasks assigned. Like, we're a community here. And part of that is supporting each other through, meaning there's no reason that you can't have someone in your home group read this assignment or this paper and then share out with you the learnings from it. And that was a really pivotal moment for me, just like shifting my mindset to that of following instructions and being a passive learner to being active in the community. And so that was a really, really monumental moment for me, as small as the conversation seems, just shifting my mindset to think about things. And I think that's what TDs do really well, is that they shift our mindset and help us think about things differently.
The all of the TDs have been like the principle I've always wanted, like giving you feedback that's non-evaluative, wanting to see you succeed, always on your team. It's nice to have this person who is so experienced, but like has none of the politics attached to your job. And so I've really heavily relied on them for support. I think the biggest thing I can think about is I've been at 4 schools in the past 9 years, and every job transition has a bit of anxiety, a bit of imposter syndrome. It's hard to put myself out there. And TDs have really been wonderful, like brainstorming, like what I want out of the school and what's important to me and like how I can find that. Cause looking for a job is also challenging when you're like not in the building and you can't get a feel for what the school is like. So I found that TDs have been like enormously supportive in that. My last year in the fellowship, I was actually part of a home group that was based around people who were transitioning jobs. And so I just got like immense support in like navigating a new workplace. And, just having someone who's always on your team, but also just like knows what the experience is like has been huge, especially at some schools don't have that as like some schools do have that figure, but my schools haven't. So it's been really nice.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add other than I don't think I've ever been around a group of more experienced and competent and brilliant people. And if I have, they certainly haven't been as like loving and non-judgmental. So it's a nice package. They're kind of, yeah, like Emily said, they're the principal you've always wanted. They're like the parent you've always wanted. It's kind of cool as you move through the program, you cycle through different TDs, and they each provided a unique kind of lens for you to help you look through. And I'm just remembering right now as we became a senior fellow this summer, and I went up to Ayana, one of our TDs who I was not very close with, and I said, I've never shared fewer words with someone and been more impacted by what they said. And so sometimes the time is short with them, but their impact is, yeah, incredible.
Yes. Thank you all so much for sharing. I'm just bringing back lots of thoughts about my TDs that I had too. So I'm sure we could talk for a long time about those relationships. I think another really important part of the Knowles relationship is actually people who aren't physically there with us generally, if at all, which is our students. And in what ways have you felt that your students have been impacted by your participation in the Knowles Fellowship? Emily, would you be willing to start us off on that one?
Sure. I'm not sure I can like totally quantify all the ways my students have benefited, but one thing I always think about, and this goes off what Lucas was saying, is just like, I just felt loved and I felt appreciated by Knowles, and I felt this encouragement, like Jen mentioned, like to just have some balance in my life, in an industry that doesn't remind you to do that, right? Like self-care is like a radical idea in teaching, and Knowles promotes that in addition to asking you to like hold yourself accountable and to high expectations. And so I think just like I went in with this with just like more balance and self-care, and I can't quantify how that helped my students, but I'm sure it did, right? Like if you can be in the classroom and be happy and be a better educator, your students benefit. I think beyond that, I was given a safe space or like a safe community to like try things and mess up and get feedback. Knowles helps you commit the time to do some inquiry with your practice and really think about how you can grow. And schools don't make that time for you because there's so much to do. Like it's not, so maybe some schools do, but the schools I've been in, it's just been like, there's too many meetings, too many things. And Knowles having me consciously think about my practice is something that I feel so lucky that I've been trained to do, because I think it's like only led to me improving a lesson, right? Like I know how to look at a lesson, think about if it went well and tweak it. And that came with a lot of practice over the 5 years in the fellowship. But I notice it's something my colleagues don't have in their practice. And so they don't have this sense of if they're serving their students. And so I think that like they can understand it maybe if the metrics are pushed to them from admin, but it's not coming from them. And so I think that is the big way, is like having that sort of in my teaching blood to like do some inquiry with my practice.
Yeah, I'll build off of that. Especially as a beginning teacher, I often felt like I was drowning or flailing and just like trying to get a lesson out. And Knowles providing the time in those cohort meetings in the space to like just sit and reflect on like one component of my teaching for 3 days with a bunch of other people who are really invested in helping me get that was huge. Like I would have never, as a third year teacher, gone through an inquiry cycle to think about what student talk looks like in my classroom if I didn't have that time with Knowles. And so going to those meetings and meeting with my critical friends and figuring out ways I could gather data about what student talk looks like in my room, and then go back to them and look at it together and have time to reflect on that. Like Emily said, it's hard to quantify all of those little changes, but I know that it made a huge difference just getting that time.
Yeah, I concur. I think that the quantitative data to say the students are the center of everything is really hard because there's so much of it. And I really feel like at every meeting, the students are centered in everything that we do, like realizing that they are the end customer of the work that we're doing here. And for me, it's always thinking about specific students and the way that the students or certain students are impacted by the way that we teach. So not the mainstream, but the ones that are out on the fringes, the ones that maybe somebody forgot about, or maybe are struggling more, or maybe even on the other end that are performing better. But it's always, how does what we're doing impact them? And I know for me, it's always keeping that one or two students. Who's the student in the back of my mind as I go through this work or through this conference? So I think they're there in everything that we do.
Thank you all so much. Well, for our last question, maybe perhaps fitting for this particular webinar that we are having now, is why do you think that new teachers should apply for the Knowles Fellowship? Jennifer, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, sure. There's so many reasons. I remember when I applied, I was one of the people that didn't think I would even be eligible. I did not have a degree in mathematics. I was a math teacher. I had been out of college for several years. So all of the things that Jen put up on the slide just didn't seem like they fit me. But even though this is my like fourth career, I'm coming in with the intention to stay for, in it for the long haul. And Knowles has elevated to my teaching to a level that I never could have achieved on my own. And I think that's the biggest reason. There's so many others, the support, the like Emily mentioned, in terms of just the self-care and the focus on you, realizing you can't be your best for students if you can't be your best for yourself. But to me, it's really just, it's allowing me to reach a level I never would have been able to reach without it.
First of all, I just think you have nothing to lose. Like, there's no downside to applying. I actually applied twice. My first time applying, I did not get in, and I got in the second time, and it was meant to be because I got to be with Erin in my cohort. And so just people who apply, if you don't make it past a certain round this time, apply every year that you're eligible. No reason not to. I also think that it just gives you this family that like you just wouldn't have had otherwise. I think the people are really what knocks it out of the park. I mean, I think the numbers that, Jen put up there before are very flashy and very enticing. But for me, what makes it sustainable is I have this like family of teachers who have like really understood what I went through and will support me. And I have people I can go to with any question. And so I think that is like, you can't put a price tag on that. And also, I think that they just create really good teachers. As someone who's moved to many schools, I get a lot of reactions when I move to a new school, and they're like, wow, like I impress people. I'm always like, you should see the other people in my cohort. Like, I'm not like, this is nothing. And so I think that's just like, it's nice to be part of this like elevated group of professionals who really care about what they do. And it makes teaching a lot more fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with all that. I think for me, hands down, it's been the most valuable aspect of my teaching career, for sure. Teaching's really hard. And once you get out of your training program and you're by yourself in your own classroom, it can be really insular. And it's hard from what I gathered from people around me, it can be really hard to grow and develop and learn. And I think that's one of the greatest causes of teacher burnout, is when you get better from year 1 to year 2, and then you kind of like plateau, and then that feels awful. But having Knowles to help develop you, and in particular that cohort model, to support you kind of at every step through your first 5-6 years and beyond in the senior program fellow, I think is invaluable. Yeah, I think you all said it best. I'm not sure what else I could add to that. Go apply.
Yes, I agree. Definitely go apply. At this time, I know there was at least one question that was put in the Q&A, but please, if you have other questions, we would welcome them. You feel free to type them. Let's see. So there is a question for Jen that we had, which was about, does your major in undergrad need to be a direct match to the subject that you're teaching? So for example, if you're teaching chemistry with a BS in biological or maybe psychological sciences, something like, is that okay?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it doesn't need to be an exact match. So for example, we have many math teachers who have degrees in engineering or some other related field, but we are looking for folks who have the equivalent coursework, or equivalent understanding of the content in which they're going to teach. And we look at that on transcripts, as well as looking at other experiences through other jobs or something that they might have that shows that you have a current and deep understanding of the content that you're looking to teach.
Great, thank you so much, Jen. A question for our panelists. How does the Knowles Fellowship support teachers who are passionate about social justice? Emily, I know you've done stuff with this, so I was going to throw it to you, but
yeah, it sounds like Jen has too. There are so many ways. What's nice about Knowles is you can kind of pick how you want to approach this topic. And so I know that like at the cohort level, this is a conversation like your identity in the classroom is one of the first things that Knowles wants to start off with and help you understand how your identity impacts your students, both as Jen was saying before, how our identity is impacted in negative and in positive ways. We have lots of book clubs around social justice issues. During the pandemic, I read Black, Brown, Bruised by Ebony McGee, and that was awesome. That was like put on, I think, by like a first year fellow who just wanted to read the book with people. And so they came to a TD and said like, I want to read this book. I don't want to read it alone. Can we make a book club? And then there was like 30 of us who did it. So it's just cool to have a community to do stuff like that with. Any kind of grant writing you want to do around social justice work, you can write grants for that. So I went to a couple conferences. I also did like a seminar in California on someone else's recommendation on like social justice in the classroom. And I'm currently on the engineering leadership team, and we're developing right now professional development on social justice and engineering curriculum. So we're like within Knowles trying to produce our own stuff because there's actually not like the best stuff out there for engineering work. So there's that. But any grant you write, it doesn't have to do with your content. So if you're a chemistry teacher, any experience doesn't have to be connected to chemistry content. If it's anything that could support your students or you, it's fair game. And so it's about, thinking about how it's going to help your practice. I don't know, Jen or Lucas, if you want to add.
Yeah, I would echo everything you said, Emily. The only thing I know I in particular, without even using grant money, I invited Knowles to be a part of a project we're working at our school regarding social innovation, which social justice is a major part of. Social innovation is just ways of making social changes in whatever industry that you're in. So for us, it's how do you make social changes in the field of education? And I have a co-teacher at my school who has her master's degree in social innovation. So we've been trying to kick this off because there isn't a lot of high school level programs in that that work in the social innovation field. And so Knowles has been supportive in the way of just partnering with my school and with our students and listening to them. So a couple of the TDs attended a presentation our students did in January about regarding their 4 goals in social innovation, which were, it was a climate change goal and a gender equity goal, they called it a bias in education, but basically trying to bring different lenses to the instruction and different perspective to the instruction that we provide through community partnerships and resources. And then I'm trying to, what was the last one? There was one more. I'm forgetting it. But anyway, the TDs were just there to listen and to offer advice to our students. And that was fantastic, just to have that degree of partnership as well.
Thank you so much. A little bit more on the grant writing process. What is that process time consuming? Kind of what is the process like? How do grants get approved? Do most of them get approved? Anything on that? Lucas, would you be willing to answer that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, my experience is that most, if not all, grants get approved, just not necessarily your first time. If you have a good idea that is about developing yourself or improving your students' lives or what have you, Knowles is going to support you in shaping that vision in a way that can be supported financially, can be funded. I would say early on when you're starting to write, sometimes it does take longer, and depending on the ambition of the scope, like the proposal I wrote to go to Norway involved like, I don't know, 40 to 80 hours of communication and research, but that was a huge project. While another one might only take like an hour or two. And I would also say, as you go through your 5 years, you get better and better and better at writing proposals. You get a ton of support from the TDs. They're basically kind of like co-writing it with you and helping you get better at it. And now that I'm looking for other ways to get funding, my proposal writing skills have really been sharpened. So when I write one to my district or a local place in my state, like I always get it because I have good skills now. And I think I got those from Knowles.
Yes, I would just echo what Lucas said, which is that I think it's really about your personal growth in being able to write grants. So they do give you a template, which is a great way to kind of, especially when you're first starting, figure out what you really need to write about. And it is an excellent template, so much so that I actually used the template when I wrote up my maternity leave proposal for my work, and I got what I wanted. So, you can use that template for just about anything. Speaking of, I guess you kind of touched on that a little bit, Lucas, but what is the time commitment per week, per month? How would you define what does it mean to be involved in Knowles as far as time goes?
Yeah, I think that really depends on each individual person. One of the things that's cool, and a few of you touched on this earlier, is you can opt in to as much as you want and get all the support you'd ever want. Like if you wanted to make it a 40-hour a week like thing, like you could, if you were like, no one does that, but you could. But I would say it's a bit of punctuated equilibrium, I suppose. There's like always a little bit of emailing communication and networking, and maybe you're reading a book in book club or doing some of our continuous engagement stuff. Really not too much. And then all of a sudden it's like you get ready for a meeting and it ramps up and you have a few more hours that week, or you're writing a proposal and that takes a few hours, which again is opt-in. It's hard for me to put to be more quantitative than that, but maybe someone else could with their experience.
Well, one thing I would clarify is that there's plenty of fellows who do not write a single grant all 5 years. Like they come for the meetings in the community and they don't have the capacity to write the grants. So just like Lucas was saying, it's opt-in, but I have to be clear, like you don't have to write any grants if you're not interested in using the money in that way. I would agree that it fluctuates. I would say that at most like 5 hours a month, like would probably be an average for me that I can remember.
For me, this is more my own experience than answering the question, but I felt a ton of guilt and tension in my first maybe year and a half of being part of the fellowship, that I was not able to give as much to the fellowship as I would have liked. I had 3 preps, I had a workshop, I had a mentor group, I had 3 clubs. Like I just was giving so much to school that I couldn't give to the fellowship. And over time, what I've come to realize is that that's still leadership and that's still participation in the fellowship. And so now I look at it more of when I have the bandwidth to give, I give. And when it's my turn to receive, it's my turn to receive when I need to be supported. So I think that guilt is gone a lot for me, just because I realize I'm still giving to the fellowship, even when I may not be able to give that time commitment over like a certain period of time. I can find other times to do that and balance it into everything else that I have. And I think the best part of being in this fellowship is that everyone understands that and is incredibly supportive of the fact that we're all in different places in our lives, in our professions, and just kind of in where life is pulling us in the many directions it is. So I think we have a special interest group starting up for parents. I have 2 kids and they were toddlers when I started the fellowship. So that was really a challenge. And it's nice to know there's people in that same boat, and that even the people that aren't understand that it makes it a little bit a different experience for us.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing. Jennifer, I think you had said something earlier about like, it's about your learning. And I think that Knowles does a great job of offering a lot of different options for what one could do. And it really is thinking through like, what are you interested in learning about? As Emily said, there's book clubs. We have a book committee that chooses a book for the whole community to read and plans things. We have a review process where people can, when they submit a presentation they want, they get to review those presentations and decide who gets to present or what feedback they need. There's coaching, there's writing for our teacher-led publication called Kaleidoscope. There's lots of different things. And kind of on that, one person has asked, what does anyone do with the stipends during the summer? What do you do during the summer? I know, Emily, you answered in the chat. Someone asked if you'd taken college courses in the summer, but what have people done with their summertime?
I don't have a very exciting answer, but I'm still happy to. I used my time in the summer and some of my funding to support my education in CTE, or career and technical education. So in Washington State, it's a different certification. And since my background is in aviation, I want to be able to combine that and use that with what I do at school. And so in order to do that, I have to have a second certification. So I used a lot of mine to take continuing education courses in the CTE field. Yeah.
Yeah, I go fishing and camping and hanging out with my friends. I want to make sure I'm clear on the question. Like, the stipend is provided during the summer as a way so that you're financially able to continue on without like having to get a second job. That's how I'm interpreting that question. But I know that other people use the stipends for travel or more professional development, or a lot of times people write their grants, which is a little bit different, or can be, to do things like, I think Emily went to the Galapagos and did some professional development there. That's when I did my Norway trip, was in the summer.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Yes, and Lucas did make a good point. Yes. So the stipend itself is for, like, you don't have to do anything with it in particular. It's so that you have the time and space to reflect or plan things. And I might have cut you off, Emily, but you were frozen, so I apologize if I did.
Am I frozen now?
No.
Oh, I was just going to say, I also hung out with friends and family, traveled a little bit, and the stipend made it so I didn't have to take a job. But I also scheduled a lot of my longer professional development experiences over the summer, because sometimes it's hard to do stuff that's more than a couple of days during the school year. So any of my big trips that were PD based.
Okay, looks like Ebony might be typing an answer to a question, so I'm going to skip over that, but know that I'm not, I think you're going to get an answer. I'm not just skipping over you willfully. So the next question is, does the fellowship support fellows in its careers in education that are not teaching once the 5 years are over? So for our senior fellows that are here, sorry, Jennifer, someday. And yes, I guess it depends on what you mean by support. As senior fellows, you aren't like getting a yearly stipend, for example, like nobody is. But I actually like work at a college, so I am not in a high school situation any longer. And I still like also work for Kaleidoscope, which is our teacher-led publication. So in like I am still getting professional development, which I am counting as support, but there's not monetary support. I don't know, Emily, you're in the engineering. I wasn't sure if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of us, or not a lot, but there's a chunk of people who have transitioned from teaching roles to other roles, whether it's admin or moving to like education nonprofits. And so you still can access the community. You can still present at a summer meeting. This year we had some people coming back who like moved to curriculum jobs. So you still have the community and access to it.
Yeah. And then last one, which I'm sure we as fellows can answer, but Jen, perhaps you also have some more like broad like organizational answer to as well. What is Knowles doing to acknowledge and change its predominantly white community to support more BIPOC teachers? I can just say, I know from my experience, this is like a very large topic, both among fellow-led initiatives, as well as from what I can see, the organization trying to change that. But I don't know if others, like I said, perhaps Jen, you have more like specific answers that you'd like to share.
Sure, why don't I jump in and then the fellows can talk from your perspective. I just echo what you said about it is something that we are constantly working toward, and both in how and where we're recruiting for potential fellows with applicants, and trying to increase the number of folks who are applying for the fellowship. And once we fellows are in, it stays a conversation. In what ways how is what we're doing supporting certain fellows and not others, unintentionally. So who are we centering, and how can we change that? How can we think about that from a curricular standpoint in our own fellowship as well? So it's a constant topic of our focus.
I could just add to this question that it's something that is a conversation nationally about the teaching profession in general, right? Like teaching is like 80% white and female, I think is the statistic. Could be wrong, don't quote me on that. And so I think that, again, I think what I've heard is that the best recruiting is word of mouth. And so it's about talking about the fellowship and trying to get people that we know at our schools to apply, but also in general, making teaching more sustainable and appealing, so that more people look at it as a possible profession. And so Knowles is constantly having these conversations, and it's the conversations within cohorts. I know right now you're looking at a lot of white people on the screen, but we since Aaron and I have been there, we have seen an improvement and better support. And also I think just like a better job listening to our BIPOC fellows about what that they need to feel supported by the fellowship.
Thank you so much, Emily. I know that there is still one more question, but unfortunately it is now 8 o'clock where I am, 9 o'clock where you are, perhaps a totally different time. Emily, thank you for typing there. If there are other questions that have just come up for you, or maybe that come up at 2 a.m. today that keep you awake, you can always direct those questions to apply@knowlesteachers.org. That is teachers plural. So with that, to learn more about that application process or to start your application, you can visit the website, which is www.knowlesteachers.org/apply. Additionally, there's more information about the fellowship if you visit the events page on the Knowles website, and you can view additional archived recordings of the August webinar that we put on. If you do have questions that were not answered during this presentation, feel free to visit the website or send an email out. And thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to getting your applications in the future.